to pick up the audio there. And welcome, Dave Avery. Dave, welcome to the virtual flight deck. We're actually debuting the name of our podcast discussion group here on YouTube. And, we're a bunch of flight simulators who love aviation, love everything that has to do with it. And I want to welcome Dave Avery into the house.
Oh, thanks for the invite, and great to be here.
Yeah, Mike, have you got audio on us now? We can see you.
I do now, yes. I was just about to pop in here after Dave did his little intro. Chat, guys, welcome to, again, the first installment of the Virtual Flight Deck on my channel. I'm also streaming this on my side today, just to get a little bit more exposure to the YouTube world. But I would encourage you guys to head over to Captain Jack Flight Sim and head over to his chat, as he is the head host of this podcast, and take questions over to his chat and all that kind of stuff. And welcome Dave, who's a senior staff engineer of simulators for a major U.S. airline here. Really excited to have you on board today. I'm excited for the conversation, what we're going to talk about, and give us your experiences with what you guys do and all that kind of stuff over there in Colorado. And obviously you guys can say what's up to Owls,
Yeah, as I like to say, the nearly famous and always amazing Owls on board. I'm going to come up with another fancy title for you too, Mike. But want to welcome those of you in my chat. Once again, we are simulcasting this, as we say in the broadcasting business, on Mickety Mike's channel. So hello to everybody on Mike's channel. You can ask chat questions there. Over here, Talon's Aviation is aboard. Kelmo is here. Mark is here. Dominic is here. Hello, Dom. Of course, Dave there in the window. Aviation is the best. Yo, welcome. And your Sim CFI, man, I'm so glad you were able to make it in here. I know you're about to head off on an adventure, so welcome. Mike, do you have anybody in your chat side yet?
Yes, I do. I've got Fenix, Virtual, Skystream Aviation, Sacktown's in the house, Kahlua, Agent 3422. We got Synced. We got LA Jets as well. We got Mr. 11. I'm not sure who that is. It's nice to meet you, 11. Jacob Marshall, and Noah's in the house. What's going on, Noah? Hope you're doing well. Appreciate you stopping in. Welcome.
Hey, right on. Noah in the house. Noah, good to have you over there, and we're glad to be here. I'm still working a few of the bugs out of my little deal here, so let me get that straightened out here. There we go. All right, now I know what I'm doing. Take a little practice. Anyway, welcome to everybody. Jacob Marshall just popped up. So, Dave, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us what you do in the airline industry, how long you've been involved. Dave is also, as I am, an amateur radio operator. KF0QQV is his ham radio call sign. And Dave, welcome to the Virtual Flight Deck.
Well, thanks for the invite. Yeah, I've been involved in simulation for 35 years. Current job, 25 plus, just over 25 years. I'm on the operational side of simulation, so we are the training departments of the airlines or operators or whoever is involved. Little different than the gaming side of simulation. I was thinking about it earlier. One of the things is we rarely fly a full flight. We believe in reposition used heavily. Land, takeoff, maybe climb to cruise, and then 5 minutes later you're ready for descent, no matter where you're going. Training time is way too valuable to spend it cruising. So we tend to cram a lot in a 2 or a 4 hour period. And in doing that, it's very rare, except maybe on some of our narrow body fleets, to ever fly a end-to-end flight. Just don't have the time to waste when we're on a multi-$1,000 an hour operational schedule in the training department. But we're an essential part of the airline. We are responsible for keeping every pilot current and qualified in their aircraft, and also training them for every aircraft they transition to. Airline pilots typically are only kept qualified on one airplane type. So we break airlines into fleets, and depending on what you're flying, you'll only train on that family of aircraft. And then if you want to transition to a different aircraft, even if you've flown them before, you got to go back to school. and spend your time for about a month getting requalified on that aircraft and basically getting your type rating re-upped, and then you're legal to fly again. But there's a whole lot of operational training that goes into getting a pilot from starting out to getting them into an airplane, whether they're new hire or just transitioning fleets. They've got over a month of classroom and simulator time, typically 10 procedure trainer and 10 full flight sessions to get you current on an airplane. And then if you're regularly flying, you just come in for a day or two, twice a year or twice every 18 months. And we teach you on one session, and then the other 9-month period, you actually you get to sit in with an examiner and put your license to risk and go have some bad times.
Dave, you said several things in there that made me want to ask a couple of questions. I want to say hello to Graham in Scotland, who's watching, as a matter of fact. Your SimCFI is here. Said in my training in PPC, you get redone every 15 minutes. Okay. And did a full flight once in the sim. Dave, tell us a little bit about what that picture is over your right shoulder there. And tell us about some of the simulators that you keep an eye on and that you deal with all the software and instrumentation and everything in your real life work there.
So this is a picture I've used for a long time. It is from the manufacturer of our simulator, so it doesn't have any airline markings on it. And so this is a CAE 7000 XR series cab. What's inside it could be any airplane in the world. Whether it's a Learjet or a A380, on the outside, they all look the same. There's absolutely nothing to tell you what cab has been stuck inside that box. This is a modern sim, so those legs underneath it are electric drive. They're not hydraulic anymore. And as you can see, it's all very fiberglassy and smooth. Other than those bomb bay doors you can see on the bottom side, which get you access to the actuators for the controls, rudders, pedals, columns, wheels, whatever they might be. Everything else is up on board inside the enclosure. I've actually got another picture. Let me swap something here. Do I have it?
Hey, Dave, while you're looking for your picture, I just want to tell you, I know that Al's is planning on building one of these in his backyard here.
Right. Yeah, we're all going to his house for World Flight next year.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, actually, I don't have it up, so I'll work on that in a minute. But I've got a picture of a multi sim area. Actually, did I put it in this one? Yeah, that one. This one.
Yeah.
That's actually in the factory. That's 3 sims under construction. But that's typically what a sim area would look like. In our case, I think we just put our 53rd sim in the building now.
Wow.
Yeah. The numbers are absolutely insane. We just put our 11th 737 Max, and we're finishing our 7th 787.
Holy smokes! Wow.
And I got the number 8 arrives next week for the 87 fleet, and number 9 is under construction.
Jeez, man, I tell you, how many total are in your?
Right now we have 52 full flight bays.
Okay, and
so 49 of them are in use today. That's what the number is. But we've also got a dozen plus fixed base non-motion training devices, which is basically the same thing, but without the legs underneath it. So no shake, rattle, and roll, but it's the full cockpit or close to the full cockpit. Some of them are flat screen only, touch screen. Most of them are full tactile, actual, or simulated every panel in the cockpit.
Dave, approximately what does a full training simulator like that cost?
10 to 15 mil.
Okay. Okay.
Wow.
So, Alan, let's see. If you get every one of your subscribers to donate, what, a couple $100, you're good to go. Yeah, very good. And Dave will come and install it for you too. Want to say hello to Aviation Geek who just popped up. Boris is here. KI0AR is here. Good afternoon, Flyboys, he says. And Jacob Marshall says he got the chance to see a similar 6-axis simulator at Leonardo's training facility at RNAS. I can't pronounce that. Yeovilton? Absolutely.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Dave, you know what that is. Mike and Al's, I can think of about 50 million questions here.
Yeah.
Al's, Mike, why don't you go ahead and pick it up and let's get you in there too.
Go ahead, Alice.
All right. I got one question off the bat. So you said that every single one of those things, like the full simulators, it could look the same but have a whole different cockpit, right?
Yeah. The shell, the body, what you're looking at the front here up there, that's the mirror that's for the visual. That is all consistent. Those never change. All that changes is the interior fitment between the instructor station and the windshield. So all that sheet metal and trim and all the accessories are completely custom to whatever cockpit you're training. So that whole thing is built up from scratch for each type of aircraft.
That's crazy. I was like wondering, like, how would the size be from like having an A380 simulator than having like a 7.3 simulator to get that like cockpit size down?
It's what they basically have is the optics is the same. So you basically position the pilot eyeball in the right spot in the area, and then you build everything out from there. And that's how you fit it into that cab. And whether there's extra empty space on the outside or not doesn't really matter. So a lot of times, you look at some of the BizJet sims, a citation or something like that. There's almost a wall with a whole cave hole in it between the instructor and the crew, because there's a little area for the crew, but then the back of the sim is full size for the instructor and the rear area behind it. But the visual, the optics, and everything else dictate everything else, because the BP screen, the mirror around it are all constant size. Everything else just has to fit to that.
Makes sense.
Yeah, Mike, you want to go ahead?
Just simple one is just run me through your day. What does a day in the life of a senior staff engineer look like at the training facility?
Pretty boring.
I don't think it can be that boring.
Well, so you gotta think, we're a training facility. So the sims are basically occupied from 6 a.m. till either 10 p.m. or 2 a.m. by crews that are training. So while a crew is training, we're not involved. The sims are being run by sim instructors. We've got a maintenance staff on 3 shifts a day. We're a 24/7 operation. Obviously, if we start at 6 a.m, we go till 2 a.m. So the reality is we're mostly desk workers. Grading results of qualification tests on the sim, proving that the sim is what it is. We have to do that every month. Working on projects, working on software. In my case, I also handle the networks that tie all the simulators together in the campus. Because there are so many of them, we're such a large campus. It's almost a quarter mile from my desk to the furthest sim. So we do everything by network heavily. So I can get to the computers on every sim sitting at my desk. We can update software. We can work on things without physically having to go out and hike across the campus. When something's going wrong, if they have problems, if maintenance needs something, or if we are lucky enough to schedule some time in a sim, then we'll get a 4-hour block to work on whatever project we've got or whatever else is needed. If a sim breaks, maintenance takes care of it about 95% of the time. and the other 5%, we will get called in, whether we're on site or off site, to come in and support the maintenance operation. But that organization is really well staffed with really good people. And most of the time they don't need us to come in because, general rule of maintenance, if it worked an hour ago or a day ago, something broke, find what broke, fix it, get it back into service. You don't really need a lot of engineering normally to find the obvious broken thing and fix it. Just like on your computers, right? If something breaks, it's the disk drive or the video card or whatever it's going to be. You pull one out of spares, plug it in, turn it on, reboot, and get back into training. It's the same. It's the same in the big world.
So, in reference to like the full motion sim and all that kind of stuff, I do have to ask, because I've never been in a full motion sim. How well does a full motion simulator depict the feeling of a real world aircraft? In reference to,
it does a decent job. It does a decent job.
So, like like thrust input and pitch and GeForce and all that kind of stuff.
Well, it's we depend on the fact that you can't see outside it.
Okay.
Okay.
There's a big piece of physiology and psychologically happening in simulation. We use the force of gravity to replace the force of acceleration. So when you're taking off, we will push the nose of the simulator physically up so that the sim will start pitching. The sim pitches, but the visual stays nice and flat and level as you're going down the runway. So as you accelerate down the runway, the imagery, what you're seeing out the window doesn't change, but you're being laid back into your seat because we're physically tipping the simulator up.
Okay.
Then we give it a bump when you lift off because your nose wheel would come up and you get a vertical acceleration. We get you a bump. And then as you start accelerating, now you get a little bit of vibration, but now we start leveling the cockpit back out again. That way, the next move that you make can cause a pitch, a yaw, or roll to give you that initial feeling. And then we damp all that back to neutral. So we're ready for the next effect we're going to play. Same way on landing. When you land, you'll see this lovely picture. Then when you step on the brakes and turn the reversers on, the nose of the sim, so this part right up here, will be almost down to the floor. The rear end will be 15, 20 feet in the air. You'll be pitched way down. You'll be thrown forward in your seat. But your view out the window is all three wheels on the runway. And then there's
the coordination going on there as far as the motion and the perception that you're getting from the visual out the screen. And I want to take just a moment and interject that even when I was in the static sim, which I've been very fortunate to be able to do this twice now, static sim for the Dreamliner, with the way the screens wrap around, even you get a full sense of motion. Your brain and your perception gives you an incredible sense of motion, even though you're just sitting there. You're just sitting there like we are in our home cockpits. But the way it's set up, you get a really, really distinct feeling that you're actually moving. But I've experienced the full motion as well. Very blessed to have gotten to do that. And man, I'll tell you guys, I can't wait for you two and anybody else who gets the opportunity to get a chance to do that, because it definitely is an experience. Talon's Aviation is here. Your sim CFI. Jump back in. My Sims swear at 5 a.m. not fun, he says, and he also says it's crazy how the Sims are their own mini city, electric, air, oxygen, marvel of technology. And Noah asks specifically, Dave, what is the hardest maneuver or procedure that newer airline pilots training in the Sims tend to struggle with the most?
I would say we have a FAA mandated a new set of training we do now called UPRT, Upset Recovery and Procedures Training. Basically, we blank the visual, put you in the clouds, and then we put the sim in what used to be called an unusual attitude training. Could be 30 or 40 degrees nose down, maybe rolled 30 or 40 degrees left or right. Maybe 50 degrees nose up and roll 30 or 40 degrees left or right, or maybe straight ahead and just up or down. And then we release the sim and you got to recover. That takes there's a definite precedence on what moves you make first. Pitch or roll, get out of it. We record what G forces you put on the airframe, your speeds, whether you're staying within the maneuvering envelope of the airframe.
Uh-oh,
And
monitor.
yeah, Jack, we won't talk about your landings.
No, let's
But that, if done very well, is super slick. Most pilots don't do that well. It takes a lot of practice. I had a 7576 captain who was our subject matter expert on UPRT and flew every sim in the building with the FAA when we initially qualified the UPRT maneuvers. He made it look easy because he'd done it hundreds of times. But we have to put every crew through that right now, every year. Usually it takes a couple of hits for them to sort of get the feel for it. But it is something that the company I'm with has been doing for decades. We've been doing unusual attitude training is what we used to call it. About 8-10 years ago, was it Part 60 Directive 2, if anybody wants to look it up in the FARs. Directive 2 required UPRT, required bounced landing, and those training things were added to all the sims, and then we have to qualify all the pilots with that additional training.
It's crazy that you bring up bounced landings because I was actually just scrolling TikTok not last night and saw like that it had to have been a 757 or a 767 full motion simulator, and someone was sitting in the back and they were doing bounced landing training. And now I don't know if they added more effect to the video itself because of where the guy was sitting in the back of the cockpit, but as soon as they hit that runway, they all like went down in their seat and then went right back up into the air, set full thrust, so you can see them pitching back and all that kind of stuff. And you hear the captain call out bounce landing and he's like, all right, go around and all that kind of stuff. But just seeing all three individuals in the cockpit just like do this motion when they hit the runway, I was like, man, I have got to get into a full motion sim at some point in my life. I have got to do it.
Yeah, it ends up bounced landings were, from a technical point of view, one of the hardest things for us to implement because most bounce landings are caused by pilot error.
Yeah.
Right. Unstabilized approach, way too much vertical rate of descent on impact, touchdown, whatever you want to call it. But we want to do a bounce landing without the pilots doing, hi, you're going to fly into the runway and, keep it at, 2,000 feet a minute till you smack and then get out of it. That's not good training.
Yeah.
So what we end up doing is hitting the airplane with a massive downburst at like 10 feet.
And
smack it. Because that's the only way we can actually make the stable approach unstable is smacking the airplane down with airflow, right? Because it's flying.
Yeah.
So that's one that took a little bit of finagling to make it provide the effects we needed for training. It's obviously not something you would realistically see as we're flying an actual recreation of a scenario that would happen in the real world. You wouldn't get that massive a downburst that localized in the real world. But to meet the FAA requirement for a bounced landing training, we do what has to get done.
Yeah.
But yes, it's a good bump, and you will see everybody in the cockpit go, whoa.
Yeah, it just blew my mind, especially, not to mention the fact that they were in one of my favorite commercial aircrafts ever to date be manufactured cockpit. So I'm sitting there watching, the 7.5 or 7.6. I'm almost positive it was a 7.5, and man, just watching how they're sitting there shaking around and all that kind of stuff, and then they bounce and hit the runway, and the guy has to set the thrust and go back up to a 10 or 15 degree nose up attitude to go around and set in full thrust and all that kind of stuff. And the guy with the phone is just like this, man. I'm not,
Oh yeah,
and I
yeah,
was-
it's tough.
yeah, I was like, man, this is insane, man. I got to do this one day. Just to head over to my chat really quickly. I got Just Pilot in the house. Pilot Rocky Fly with Falco and Isaac Johnson. Isaac says, "Why is owls in a forest?"
Don't ask, okay? Jeez, I want to be in the forest.
Well, he landed at Okinawa the other night. He's just
Exactly. I'm on vacation.
Yeah.
Are you hanging around with South Park or something there? It looks like one of the South Park cartoon styles.
Yeah, it looks
Dude,
like he's a Nickelodeon episode right now, but I feel like you're about to do the ABCs for me.
A, B.
Oh, very good. Let's see. Jacob Marshall says, Dave, so it's all down to using what he calls it, the somatogravic illusion. I don't know if he's joking.
Yeah.
I don't know that word. So
A lot of it, yeah. I mean, we're definitely using your inner ear to
okay.
trick you into thinking that accelerations in the longitudinal and lateral acceleration are happening. I mean, we can actually move the sim front and back and side to side a little bit, but most of our acceleration feel is done with roll and pitch. So the same way, if you're taxiing and you turn hard and scrub the nose wheel and you're getting thrown to the side of your seat, yeah, we're just rolling the simulator and you're falling over sideways. Right. Again, we take acceleration and turn it into roll attitudes in whichever axis, because your ear is very good at fooling you.
I got a question. So you're saying like you keep like referring to like we'll roll it, we'll pitch it. So the people in the back, are you guys actively like?
No, it's all programmed.
Oh, okay, that's what I was thinking.
So you're familiar with what you do in the simulator, where you apply flight control inputs to the airplane, and it's programmed with equations of motion that take pitch, yaw, roll of flaps, rudders, elevators, whatever, engine force, and move the airframe. Well, we've got another secondary set of equations of motion that take the calculated pitch, yaw, roll, and the three accelerations, forward, lateral, and vertical, and turn those into body position, and then take that and turn that into leg positions and drive the cab to whatever we want it to do. But then there's a whole secondary set that are not just those numbers, because then we have to wash it out. So we put a value in to roll it, pitch it, whatever, but then we don't want to stay there because we want to roll back towards neutral over 20, 30 seconds. So that if you do something else, we have a fresh frame of reference that we can twist, rock, rattle, and roll again from there. So it's the deriving that set of control laws that turn airframe attitude and accelerations into motion platform attitude and accelerations are one of the pieces of software that the sim manufacturers tend to guard pretty heavily, because that's the feel of the sim and that's one of the things they're selling.
Hey, Dave, I've got another question for you too. Tell us about the computers that run the simulation. Tell us about how they might, for instance, stack up with what we have here in our homes. That sort of thing.
They stack up like junk. So simulators are bought typically when we buy as an airline or as a training center. Simulators are bought when you buy airplanes. We, as an airline, buy an airplane and we expect to operate it for 20, 30, 40 years. 757s at my airline are all 40-ish years old now.
Yeah.
So are the simulators. So I'm still running on 1980s 400 megahertz 32-bit machines.
That's amazing.
With 64 meg of RAM on them that run the 7.5 sims.
Wow.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah, if you know your computer history, we're still running on DECVAX mini computers.
Oh, wow.
One mini computer runs the whole simulator.
That's insane.
One CPU, one core, and it runs the entire 757.
Well, chat, you heard it
Everything,
today.
everything but the
today.
visual.
I can now
Everything but the
build a
visual.
full motion simulator in my house and run it off of my computer. All right. Now, and speaking of like the full motion sims and how the computers run it and all that kind of stuff, I had a great question in chat from Mr. Falco. He says, just a curious question. Is it possible to break a full motion sim due to putting the sim in an unstable flying conditions?
No. Cool. Nope. We actually do. These take a lot of space. That bay you're seeing behind me, that's roughly 50 foot square.
Wow.
In our buildings, we currently allow 50 foot footprint, a square 50 foot footprint for every sim.
Wow.
Because if you look at that, right, we're here. If you pitch it and move it, there's a lot of structure up here above the leg. And if it's pitched to the side or to the front or back, that structure is moving beyond the center of movement in whichever way you're moving. So even though the legs don't move that far, the top of the sim can move pretty far. So it takes a pretty good room. But we actually do run limit tests on the simulators during acceptance and pitch them in every direction to their max limit of travel to make sure that we're not impinging on any building structure. One of the things that I know of training centers, we have not had this problem, but I do know of training centers that have to limit their motion and have to put like optical sensors from the floor to the ceiling to shut the motion down if it would lean out beyond where it's programmed to go. That's certainly a risk. But if you got enough room, no, you can drive them to every direction. There is a condition called the lean out. Some sims, this particular model doesn't. I don't think you can actually lean it out. Were such that if there was enough mass up on top, high on the sim superstructure, you could push it far enough in one direction that the leg didn't have enough force to pull it back. That was a condition, and there are escape ladders or ropes in every sim in case you would lean out and you couldn't bring it back down to where the stairs or drawbridge could reconnect and let you off the easy way. But usually lean out requires a failure of, a sim that's got weight distribution that it could naturally stay suspended, and a failure of the motion system so that you don't have the forces to pull it back. So if you leaned out somewhere in whatever direction it was, and then you lost hydraulic pressure on a hydraulic sim, or you lost power on an electric sim, I could stay there. The electric sims all have battery systems in the motion control cabinets just for that, just so they can do an emergency reset basically and suck all the legs back to the ground. Because it is a concern. I mean, if you look at these legs on this sim here, this area right down here is actually a big electric motor. And then there's a lead screw that runs up inside the length of the leg that pushes the rod in and out. So that's a, I don't know how many horse motor down at the bottom of each leg, but they take probably a 4-aught or 2-aught wire for the 3 phases going into the motor.
Wow. That's some heavy duty power. What's the power supply for this thing look like?
It's a 8-foot long cabinet, 4 foot high and 2 foot deep, and takes 400 volts and does 200 amps.
All right, so I retract my last statement. I can't run a full motion sim on my home build.
Yeah,
sure you can. You just gotta call the power company and tell them you need a new transformer outside just for you.
Dave, you know, one of the things once again that I was really surprised at when I was in the simulator is that frankly, guys, the visual scenery that we have in Microsoft Flight Simulator is just vastly superior. Looks really so much more real. All of that. Dave, why is the shall we just say it this way? Why is the scenery? Is it not that important as far as what you do in the real world sim training?
Yeah, we care about the airport environment. So basically, from 1,000 foot to the ground, a mile outside the extent of the runways, taxiing and terminal, we model those well. Hate to say it, but the rest of the time, all that beautiful scenery you guys look at, yeah, we put a cloud layer in between that and the airplane.
Oh, geez.
So you get to see white. Pretty
Nice.
much white out the window is the normal environment in a simulator.
Yeah.
We're really concerned about the maneuver we're working on and what we're training. All of our pilots are obviously IFR rated. They're all used to flying on instruments. They don't look out the window much to fly. So we only really care about the airport environment in so much as it affects visual effects for the airport. There are some airports that have, well, I mean, I know Captain Jack wants to go into like ASE or
Eugene.
some of those, the Eagle.
Just put up a video on that landing, and it's gorgeous.
Yeah, but don't do a mist at Aspen. It's not fun. It's not fun.
No,
there's a mountain at the end of the runway.
Right.
You miss at Aspen and it's crunch.
No, it's off and to the left a little bit and through a cut.
Yep, I have a radio station up there. I am real familiar with how narrow that valley is. Dave and Mike, if you've got some questions in your chat, let's not miss those. But aviation is the best. Asked Dave, how often do the machines tear up? What is the hardest procedure that they have? I presume he's asking about repair.
The hardest things we do in the sims these days are UPRT, because unusual attitude and bounced landings and things like that tend to be fairly aggressive in a short span of time. Wind shear training used to be a concern, but that's become so every day we don't even think about it anymore. So the sims are pretty rugged. We do get just normal wear and tear, just like any mechanical device. Things come loose, but they get pre-flown every night by our technicians, and loose things get tightened and broken things get fixed. It's actually super rare that we have a major mechanical problem on a sim. Really, most of this stuff is, the nightly stuff, 90% of the time, except on the newest airplanes, it's replacing light bulbs and tightening knobs and getting the vacuum cleaner out and the window cleaner out and cleaning the cockpit.
Yeah.
Because I will tell you, there are more fingerprints on instruments from 12 hours of cruise pointing at things that we have to clean off. It's amazing how they aren't touchscreens, but they sure get an awful lot of fingerprints.
I bet your guys' supply of Windex in that place is pretty insane.
Actually, no, we have to use Boeing cockpit cleaner because the display units are coated glass because of anti-reflection from real ambient, and Windex has ammonia in it, and Windex and coated glass don't go together well.
Oh, okay.
So Windex is actually banned. Yeah, it's just basically alcohol and detergent and water.
Gotcha.
Basically, Windex is banned from the building.
Yeah, you don't want to use that on your monitor either there, Als. Let's see. Do you guys have more questions? More questions right off for Dave. Let's see. You guys in chat.
I think I had one, but it kind of relatively got answered in my chat. Mr. Skystream Aviation, aka FS Man, wants to know what happens if the sim begins to malfunction when a crew is actively using it. I'd assume the simple answer to that is that I'd assume that there's a failsafe in the sim where the sim will shut down on its own.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is 90% of the malfunctions of a sim aren't mechanical. They're software or the flight management computers or the visual or something like that. In which case, the instructor pauses, maybe brings off motion just so like everybody can take a coffee break, calls maintenance and says, can you come look at this or can you give me a reload? Yeah, reboot the sim. I
Mm.
mean, hey, just like the real world. No, wait a minute.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I wish it was that easy,
don't
right?
laugh. Don't laugh. 787s, that's actually a maintenance procedure on the real airplane.
Oh, I bet. I bet with
Um,
how new age the avionics systems are and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff. Just imagine
it's the
ground
all
crew just goes
electronic.
up to it and just
Oh no,
Let's wait.
no, it's like go around and turn off the batteries, turn off the APU, turn off the engines, disconnect external power, wait 2 minutes, bring them back on, hope everything restarts correctly because there's so many computers on the 7.8 that that can be an issue.
Yeah.
The reality is if a sim breaks, usually, even if something comes loose, they just stop training, pick up the phone, call maintenance, say, hey, come fix it. And they take a coffee break, and if maintenance can fix it in less than 2 hours, they hop back in the sim and finish their lesson. We might delay some training for the rest of the day to smooth that up, but we usually have some gap time. Even though we schedule 4 hours for every crew, we're under what's called the Advanced Qualification Program. It's Appendix Y to Part 120, subsection Y of Part 121. We train to proficiency, not to hours. So if a crew has accomplished their training mission for the day, they can leave. So there are some 4-hour periods that we know from the experience take 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And as sim engineers and as the maintenance people, we'll watch for those periods sometimes and keep track of the sim. And if the crew gets out early, we might sneak in and get a half hour of bonus time that we can work on something before the next crew comes marching down the hall going, hey, can we get in early? Because we want to go home early. And that happens every day.
Yeah, I can imagine. I actually do have a very
starting at 6 a.m. Yeah, I was gonna say starting at 6 a.m. is what we say. At 5 a.m., the crews are chomping at the bit, going, "Can we get in the sim?"
Yeah, I do actually have a question in reference to the full motion sims that you guys work with for training purposes and all that kind of stuff versus what it's like in a flight simulator at home experience, right? How does the full motion sim that's used for training compare to just what myself, Jack, or Owls use on a regular day-to-day basis? How would you say that Microsoft depicts, aircraft flying and all that kind of stuff compared to what you see with real-world training? How well would you say that the simulator depicts it?
I'd say it's pretty good. The reality is the data is available directly or indirectly for most aircraft that you can get enough performance data that you can match the way an aircraft performs pretty well. The expensive part is not just pretty well, but matching it good enough for the regulatory agencies in every country to say, yay, verily, you are blessed to train this device. And it has been tested to our satisfaction that is representative of that aircraft. To do that, you need either to go out and instrument an airplane, which flight safety does for a whole lot of airplanes, because flight safety primarily trains business and small jets, and their manufacturers don't provide the data needed for simulation. The major airplane manufacturers, Boeing, Airbus, Bombardier, they all provide and have an entire department that does nothing but provide data for simulation for a small fee. Something on the order of a data license for Boeing, I think, is currently $1 million, $1 million per sim per airplane type.
Oh, wow, just a small fee, right?
Just a small fee.
There goes your simulator, Mike.
Gosh, man.
But that's only if you want to qualify it under Part 60 or whatever the appropriate rules are for whatever country you're in. The other way you do it is what flight safety does. You go out and you physically put all the sensoring in an actual airplane, accelerometers and gyros and position sensors on every flight control surface, and repeaters from all the avionics, so you can get airspeed and all those data points coming back into your collection computers. And then you go out and fly a bunch of test cards, just like the airline maker would go fly. And you might have 2 or 3 weeks of 8-hour days flying that airplane to every limit of its envelope at weight, CGs, whatever, to get the raw data you need to then run the tests that you need. If anybody wants to look it up, you can go look up FAA Part 60 regulations. They have the complete list of tests that you have to match for each level of A, B, C, D qualification for the simulator,
Right.
and how tight you have to match them.
Isaac says, "Is there a full motion Cessna 172 sim? When do we get one?" With a laughing face. And I was like, and I'm sitting here thinking, I read that question. I was like, Isaac, it probably costs more to run a full motion 172 sim versus just renting one out at the airport and going up with an instructor.
The only thing is, when you do stall spin, you can't kill yourself in a simulator.
Yeah, exactly right.
The thing is I believe those do actually exist. I'll have to do some research on that, but I think we
got
may
the Redbird ones. I don't think they're full motion though.
I think we might have one here in Denver. Speaking of which, and I'll pop this up on the screen in a little while. Dave, have you heard of Extreme Flight Simulation in Chicago, where
Yes.
they've got a fully enclosed 737-800 cockpit? And I actually think they've got a couple of them, and with a couple of fighter jets as well. But they actually just opened a facility in Colorado Springs here. So, Mike, something that you guys might think about too is, or even maybe we could get them as a sponsor for the virtual flight deck. Was going to talk with you about this. And I'll pop their screen up here in just a minute, their website. But I'm real impressed with that. And that might be something you guys come and visit, and whether we can talk Dave into getting us in over at his house.
Yeah, I'd love to do a tour of the training facility over there.
Yeah. But that's something else to think about too. Dave, I wanted to ask this question as well. I don't see any new questions in the chat. Mike, do you have any new questions in your chat? So we don't miss those?
I do not see any as of right now. Isaac said in reference to what David commented about the 787 computers and how easy it is to just go up and reset an avionics system. He said it's basically like an ELAC is faulty on an ECAM and an Airbus. You just turn it off and turn it back on, see if that works.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certainly on the triple, yes, there was a procedure we had that, you pull the 4 breakers for the left aims, flight management system, leave them off for 30 seconds, and then push those breakers back in and reach up and pull the breakers on the right aims. And fly basically half the cockpit at the time, let both boxes completely reset, and 9 out of 10 times you'll come back fully operational.
Sure.
Wow. Well, you're using that older computer technology, right?
Well, I mean, even on the 787, which is PowerPC, which isn't that old, there's just a whole lot of stuff there. And there's a whole lot of computers spritzed all over the airplane that have to communicate with each other and be in agreement. In most cases, quadruple or triple redundant. So if one of them's not agreeing, then now you have the problem of, like, we go to some sort of degradation mode, and may or may not even tell the pilots that's happening. I know on the triple I can lose one of the computers, and basically I don't even think you can get an ICAS message. It's like a nothing. Second one down, you get an ICAS message and you go into some sort of degradation mode. But the modern airplanes are amazingly fault tolerant and redundant.
Yeah.
Hey, we got another question here, Dave. What are all the airplanes that you have in your facility, the different aircraft?
So currently we are training the A320 CO and Neo. So I've got 1 Neo sim in now, maybe 2. I don't know. That number's changing monthly. 7576, 76400, 37 NG, 37 Max, 777. So basically everything Boeing builds currently, because we got rid of our 747s, and A320s.
What happened to those sims?
They went all over the place.
I was about to say,
Um,
some multi-millionaire flight sim nerd probably's got it sitting in his garage right
Yeah,
now. You know?
Well, there's actually who's ATI down in Centennial has 4 sims now, I think.
Oh wow.
They got our 747-200, which was a very special sim. It had the Space Shuttle Transport Dynamics mod on it, so NASA trained on it for their shuttle transporter 747, and it had the Air Force One kneecap mid-air refueling mod on it. So the Air Force used it for our airborne command post and Air Force One crews. And so when we got rid of it, because we no longer flew 747s, we sold it to ATI, and then they kept it like for another 5 years or whatever. Their prime customer down there was some Air Force, but the Sophia infrared telescope that's built on a 747 SP platform was training there till last year when NASA canceled that program.
Right. I actually have a great question in chat from Mr. Isaac Johnson. He says, do you have different sims for different CEO variants of the 320 family, example 318, 319, 321, or is it just the 320 sim used for all CEO variants?
One sim for all.
Gotcha.
Yep. We because it's a common type rating, it's the same with like Southwest that can train pretty much everything with the max that they fly in a 737 NG sim. It doesn't matter if it's a 700, 800, 900. We may or may not have data packages for all those. In our case, we actually do have some 800 and -900 NGs. But in terms of scheduling training, they're interchangeable.
Gotcha.
I got a follow-up question to that because, like, I've heard, like, with obviously flying a 319 and a 321, it's a longer. So can you make it like feel a little bit heavier, or is there different procedures they learn relative to like a 321, or is it just all the
We
same?
actually don't. And it was sort of the joke I was mentioning actually with you, Mike. Was it Mike was flying the 777 2 nights ago, Jack?
That would have been
was
Alice. He
me.
was flying a 777.
So when the 777 was
In my stream, that was
Yeah.
John.
It was John. Okay. When the 777, because the question came up about control field, because Jack was flying a light airplane and the triple was behind it. And the reality is, triples fly by wire, so you don't have any control field connected to the flight surfaces, right? It's all back driven. The 777 was designed so that its roll rates, pitch rates, and all those numbers were similar to a 757, I believe. So they built the control laws for the pilot input to match an airplane they were already pretty familiar with. So it doesn't really make a big difference on most transport category aircraft because they're all hydraulic boosted controls. They all fly the same. The control field, everything else is pretty independent of what's sitting behind you and on the actual aluminum behind you. It's not like a private airplane where you got push rods and cables connecting you to the elevators and ailerons.
Yeah.
On big airplanes, it's all you're providing input to power control units that actually move the flight surfaces. So all the feel, even on a non-fly-by-wire, is pretty artificial. Unless you fly full manual reversion and you failed all your hydraulic systems or something.
So I've actually there's a real world commercial captain who live streams on YouTube. His name is V1 Simulations, and he talks about that all the time in the Airbus, going into alternate law and all that kind of stuff when he has different failures and that kind of stuff that brings the airplane into alternate law, and the difference in the feel of the side stick just based off of your fly-by-wire systems going into alternate law. It's just a very sluggish feel. Airplane doesn't respond nowhere near as well, all that kind of stuff. So it's awesome that the airline industry has gotten to a point, or the aviation industry in its whole, with technology advancements and all that kind of stuff, has the ability to bring a crew literally into a bubble and say, hey, we're going to recreate and train you to do exactly what it is that you're going to have to learn how to do. And then once you're done here, we're going to bring you into the real aircraft, and there's zero difference between the two, right? With the exception of now you're in the air versus, you know, sitting on a couple of tripods holding you up in the air, you know? So like it always astonishes me how much technology has gone into the aviation industry to help crews train. I mean, for example, like when I was training as a student pilot, you know, my day was just walk out to the Cessna, do your walk around, make sure the prop doesn't have cracks in it, and let's go. Right. And then, you know, with Owl's now doing his flight training and potentially getting into the commercial world when he graduates high school and all that kind of stuff. I mean, this is going to be your life once you get into an airline, man. This is once you get your selection and you get your slot and you're selected on an aircraft, this 2 or 3 months worth, right, of going into training and going into the sims and learning everything, whether it's Airbus or 7.3 or 7.5, whatever it may be, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about you learn one airplane. You know, it's not like you know, most people flying in the flight sim environment. You know, they can pick what they want to fly today. No, hey, today I'm going to be an Airbus captain. No, tomorrow I'll be a
Right.
747, well, whatever. In the airline world, you fly what airplane you're bid on. And typically, well, you know, schedules are made 90 days out. So your training when you can bid to another airplane is pretty much all based on seniority. And you have to have, you know, there has to be an opening in whatever fleet you want to go to at whatever base you want to be at. So like maybe you could be in, you know, Atlanta, but I want to fly out of Chicago because my airline also has a base there. Because you know most airlines have multiple bases. Well, I could hold, I might be able to hold captain in Chicago, but I live in Atlanta and I don't want to commute, so I'll stay first officer for another 5 years till my seniority is high enough that I can hold captain at my home airport. So there's all sorts of lifestyle decisions that go into what airplane you want to fly, where you want to fly it, what base you want to be based out of. One of the things you got to think about is, as an airline employee, you don't have to fly where you live.
Yeah,
I can live in California and be based in New Jersey.
Yeah, I actually have a real world friend of mine who I've known since I was a child, who is an airline captain on the 7.3 with American right now. And if I'm not mistaken, he still lives in Vegas, but he's based out of Miami. So he holds a captain slot out of Miami, and he commutes 5 hours to and from work every time he goes into work.
That
he loves
is
it,
crazy.
but he loves it. You know, so he's just like, hey, you know, I'm gonna jump seat with the crew rate real quick, get to work, and then I'm gonna start my trip week and turn back around and come home.
Yeah. The only proviso is if you're flying from your home to your base, it's on your time and you got to make your own travel arrangements.
Right.
So there's got to be open seats because you're not positive space. You're flying as a non-rev.
Right.
If you've reported to your base and your first flight is from a different airport, then we're moving you as part of your day of flying, at which point you have a reserved first class seat.
Right.
So there's two very different ways that pilots, you can see crews in airplanes. If they're flying from home to work, they're just like any other non-rev flying on seniority. The only advantage you have as a flight crew member over other employees is theoretically you might be able to get the jump seat in the cockpit if every other seat in the airplane is full. Assuming that another flight crew member with more seniority than you doesn't want it.
Right.
How about the jump seats? Do they take advantage of the jump seats then?
But again, it's by seniority. So if there's 3 crew members and there's 1 jump seat, senior person gets it, and the other 2 are left to figure out what they're going to do. So it's always interesting how travel arrangements are made between deadheading, which is where the company's moving you on their dime, or commuting, where you just got to figure out how to get to work. Yeah. And that might even mean buying a non-rev ticket on another airline.
Right.
So there are agreements among the airlines that employees can buy discount tickets reciprocally between airlines, but non-revs that are doing that board after all the employees of that airline.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So I mean, there's a whole series of boarding classes that you can be qualified into depending on, are you on vacation travel? Are you risking everything and taking the super cheapest employee rate, but you board after everybody else, but you can fly anywhere for basically free versus almost free? Now, so it's all about adjusting your expectations. And one of the things that airline employees get very good at is non-traditional routing of your flights. So if I need to get from Denver to New York, let's say, no, I need to get from Denver to Raleigh-Durham. Let's pick a little outer airport. Well, normally I'd fly probably to Chicago or Houston and then get down to an RDU flight. But I might fly to New Jersey and then fly to Washington, D.C., where there's a commuter flight going into RDU that I can get on. So I might take 5 or 6 legs, fly a zigzag route back. Likely I could fly from New York to San Francisco and then back to Denver. That's a very valid commuter flight because there were seats available.
You're gonna make Alice not wanna choose a hub outside of his home airport.
Well, it's again, you just learn the system and how where empty seats tend to live, and hubs are not always a good spot. So you might connect between 2 hubs by going to an outstation that has 2 flights coming into it, and it's Peoria, Illinois. You don't get a lot of people. I shouldn't use that because Caterpillar's there, but anyway, somewhere with relatively low passenger loads that you can make a connection through, even if it takes you 6 hours to go 2 hours, but you got a seat. Because the key to I've got a coworker who his wife is from Japan, and so he goes over there regularly to spend time with their family. I think he was coming back through Milan, Italy the last time, because he could get from Japan to Italy to America easier than he could get from Japan to America.
That's crazy.
Oh man, Dave, so glad to have you here today. Once again, Dave Avery is our special guest here on the virtual flight deck. We're kind of in a bit of an inaugural. I can't say Worcestershire. I can't say Worcestershire either. I'm a professional pronunciator, folks. Don't try this at home. Dave, of course, is the senior engineer for a major U.S. airline here. We'll just say it that way, in the software and simulators division. And let us know what you guys in the chat, let us know what you think about the new look for the virtual flight deck. Many kudos to Mike for essentially designing our new logo and open screen and thumbnail, as we call it. Mike, you did a great job with that. Hopefully this podcast, YouTube cast, is going to take off, as it were, into the virtual skies and bring us a lot of great information, a lot of special guests. I've already got a couple more lined up for us as time goes on. We're going to try to do this at least every couple of weeks, if not more, if we can come up with the content. So let us know in the chat what you think about the new look for the virtual flight deck and basically our inaugural takeoff here with it. Dave Avery, once again, our special guest. And Dave, I want to ask you a question too. Let's get back for just a moment to some of the training scenarios that you put real world pilots in, and how maybe most of us flight simmers really want to try to do things at least as close to accurately as possible. What are some of the training scenarios that you put people through in the real world that we could maybe try in our home simulators?
Well, I mean, one of the big ones we do are engine malfunctions. Most of those are on start. So they're at the gate or on the ramp right outside the gate. So hot start, hung start, things like that. Those get hit every time. You will see those just like you can't avoid them, but they're also real easy. I mean, literally, you look at the gauges, you flip the fuel lever up. If the fuel flow pops up faster than it should, you got a hot start, just turn the fuel lever off, let the engine motor, and you're good to go. A hung start, same thing, turn the fuel on, N1 and N2, maybe N3, depending on the engine, don't come up. They hesitate and they hang below idle. And the only thing you can do there is shut it down and try again.
What would you?
Those are things you want to recognize because they're bad for the engines.
Right.
So the crews are training basically to spot them. Hot starts tend to turn into engine fires because you're probably spewing Jet A out the rear end of the engine. That's why your EGTs have gone way up. The types of things that we see in flight might have a compressor stall at cruise, engine failure. Could be a flame out, could be high vibrations turning into mechanical failure of the engine. Anything that would cause you to either reduce thrust or shut down an engine in flight, because all of our planes are twins now. Almost all of our airplanes are ETOPS, so extended twin engine operations, so we can fly over water, out of sight of land, beyond the glide distance of the airplane, because the airplane's been qualified to fly on single engine for some extended amount of time, depending on the airplane and the airline and what qualifications we have qualified for. The longest ETOPS these days, I think 240 minutes from land.
Wow.
Which is important if you're flying from the West Coast to Australia.
You know, I like the ETOPS acronym too. Engines turn on or passengers swim anyway. That's
ETOPS is commonly
I like
referred
that.
to as engines turn or passengers swim.
Wow. I like that.
on average, you know, you get your pilots in there, they train for all these scenarios, they do all of this training and hours and hours and hours spent on it. One question you and I talked about this the other day, as a matter of fact, on the amateur radio. How many failures over the course of a career on average do you think that pilots may see that they've trained for, you know, inside one of your sims?
Probably less than a handful. Airplanes are so dang reliable that real emergencies or things that are really abnormal just don't happen very often. You know, even if we have 100 major incidents in our airline a year, you know, we do 1,000, 1,500 flights a day. Like I think it's close to 2 million flights a year. I don't even know what the current numbers are. They're ridiculous. But 100 incidents is such a tiny percentage of all the flights we do. We've got, I think, currently 17,000 pilots in the pilot cadre right now. If there's 100 incidents a year and you fly for 20 years, that's only 2,000 incidents that you could have possibly been exposed to, but there's 17,000 of you. The numbers are in the favor of very rarely ever seeing anything.
But that's the beautiful thing about these training simulations and all that kind of stuff, is that even though it's such an abnormal condition to potentially see even in your entire career as a commercial pilot, that if it does happen, that these simulators that we have nowadays for the major U.S. airlines or airlines around the world, I mean, I'm pretty sure every airline has at least one sim or they contract with another airline to use theirs. That these sims can prep you for that type of stuff, right? And
that's actually the biggest reason we train is you're so unlikely to see something that we want you to have seen it at least in a recent enough memory that it's not like, oh my God, what's happening? It's like,
Right.
oh, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
I've done this. You know,
Yeah, and
I've got 2 memory items, and pull the checklist out, and
Yeah.
maybe pull the flight handbook out and do the expanded checklist, and pick up the radio and say, hey, we got a problem, and we'll all go home for
Yeah.
dinner.
And for those of you in chat that don't know what he's referring to, that would be considered recurrent training for a U.S. commercial captain or any. I don't know how it works in Europe, but I know at least here, if I'm not mistaken, recurrent training happens every 6 to 18 months, if I'm not mistaken.
You're in the box every 9 months.
Every 9 months. Okay, sweet. I also did get a question in chat that I've been waiting to ask you about, and I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer this, but how does the common type rating work for the 787? This is coming from Isaac Johnson because he says if he remembers correctly, the 787 type rated pilots are usually 777 rated as well.
So, at least in our airline, we split them.
Okay, so they're separate. They are separate at your airline.
They are separate type ratings. However, during the initial spin up of the 787 fleets, Boeing had approval from the FAA to do 787 training in a 777 sim.
Wow.
Really?
The flight decks are very close. Not visually, obviously widescreen versus NDs.
Yeah.
Or DUs. But operationally, they're very close. Little differences. The CDUs are obviously different because you have the cursor control device on the 7.8 that you don't have on the triple. You got the knob. But the airplanes fly close enough. The overheads are almost identical.
I've noticed that in the sim. I've noticed that the 7.8 and the 777 overheads are almost mirror images of each other.
Yeah, except for the thrust asymmetry compensation switch on the triple that doesn't exist on the 7.8, and it doesn't exist on the 7.8 because it's 100% all the time. You can't turn it off. Which for people that fly small airplanes, it's a piece of magic. On a 777 or a 787, if you fail an engine, normally you have to push on the rudder for the dead engine to compensate for the asymmetric thrust. On the 777 and the 787, it automatically moves the rudder, so you don't even have to touch the rudder pedals, and it retrims the rudder as the engine is failing, and it just flies straight ahead.
Yeah, wow.
It's a wonderful piece of design. It was first introduced on the triple, and on the lifetime of the triple, by the time the 7.8 came around, they had enough experience with it that they said, this just works. We're just going to make it part of the standard setup. You won't be able to turn it off. It's just always there. But other than that, the overheads are basically identical between the two airplanes. That makes it, most of the procedures that the crews operate are the same between the two airplanes. So that's why you have, it's not a common type rating, but it was allowed to use cross-device training.
Makes sense.
Dave, more questions that I have here. Al's, Mike, of course, jump in with what you have and what you have in the chat. Don't forget, guys, to on both channels, be sure to smash that thumbs up button. Subscribe if you haven't. Mike and Al's have absolutely amazing content, and you're going to want to check them out if you haven't already, although I know many of you have, of course. And we'd like to also remind you that I stream here on Wednesday evenings just about every week, and every other week on Monday nights on the Captain Jack Flight Sim channel. And Dave, let me ask you your overall opinion on what we do here with Flight Simulator. You've had a chance to watch some of us and see what goes on. What's your overall opinion about what we're doing here on our streams and how we fly? I tell you, I always put this in Al's and Mike's chat after they've landed. Is like, when I grow up, I want to land like Mike and Al's in the airplane. And then I'm going to ask you a real world versus flight sim all about landing rate monitoring, everything. You know, we'll get to that here in just a second. But what's your overall opinion, Dave? I'd be real curious to know.
I love it. I mean, I've been around the computer or hobby flight simulation world. Probably started, oh God, I don't know. Let's see. Probably on a 286, probably on a 286 with Windows 3.1 when Bruce Hartwick still had Flight Simulator before he sold it to Microsoft. And I used it a fair amount. I lived outside Chicago, and hey, Meigs Field was great.
Oh yeah.
But so I've been aware of it. I've certainly seen the virtual ATC environment, which I think is a really nice adjunct to what you guys do. And in fact, we don't do it there are some of the European airlines that sort of do that. We don't do it. We don't get that much ATC involvement typically in what we're doing. So usually the instructor just plays ATC, and may or may not actually pick a microphone up or just may talk to the crew over their shoulders. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a really fun thing to do. Like I said, I certainly was involved in it from, its inception back when I was, a young computer kid. And so yeah, I got no problems with it. Compared to what we do, it's a different objective. We're like I said at the beginning, we don't fly complete missions end to end 99% of the time just because we don't have the time. Training time is too valuable. We have too many objectives to train to objective during a training period. We might do a takeoff. We'll start at the gate almost always. We'll do engine starts, probably have some failures there because there's something we sort of want to practice a lot because they're expensive. If you burn an engine up, that costs you the flight. It costs you replacing an engine. Airplane's out of service while they hang a new engine on it. So catching an engine fault during startup is when they usually fail. Good thing to catch and hopefully correct before and make your flight anyway. Then once we're in flight, we have specific objectives to meet, and we might do, climb to cruise, do something on that, and then reposition to approach, past stop of descent at the destination airport, fly a procedure in, maybe have a problem there, and then we might reposition right back out to 6 miles and fly another approach, and then reposition back out to 6 miles and fly another approach where, so something different that we want to practice, or 2 different runways, or practice with SMIG's guidance lighting, or whatever we're doing. Just check the boxes. Get it done and get you out of the sim and get you back to your hotel or back to the airport to go catch your next flight.
Nice. Mike, Al's, anything at the moment?
Not that I could think of.
Okay.
I've got just a random question from a member of mine named Aurora Forza in the chat for you, Dave. He just wants to know what's your favorite airport to fly into in the simulator.
I probably get more time flying into Denver than anywhere just because we're based here. Keflavik's a fun one.
Yes, I agree.
BIKF, if you don't know the airport, it's on a island plateau in Iceland. Off the end of the runway is a fairly large cliff down to the water level. So if you're flying in from the ocean side, the radio altimeter is not very useful because you're at a couple of 100 feet and then you go over the edge of the cliff and all of a sudden you're at 50 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So you really got to pay attention to the PAPIs. It's also an interesting airport because it has a humped runway.
Yeah.
From one end of the runway, you cannot see past the middle. So it's definitely one of those airports that it's one we actually added to our training scenarios. I don't know, when did I have to put it in? 10 years ago, maybe. And so we had to do a custom model for it. It's a fun airport. It's a joint military, so it's got a bunch of fighter jet revetments on one side of the other side of the runway from the terminal. So you can see some military stuff over there. Old Hong Kong was always fun.
Ooh, Kai-Tak.
No,
Um,
Kai-Tak.
Yeah. Because you flew towards the mountain and fly for the checkerboard and then turn left.
Hey, Dave. Do you have? They're going to laugh at me for this, but do you have Eagle Regional built
Yes.
into that? Because I know you've got to be specially certified a little bit. It's a bit downhill.
The 320 flies into Eagle. Yeah, it's in
Yeah.
our scenarios. Both Eagle and Aspen are both in our scenarios.
I haven't tried Aspen yet. I've done it in Eagle, and I'm kind of getting that. Like I said, I put a video up the other night that I was pretty proud of that one. That was
Yeah,
good.
I think we have San Francisco to Aspen ski service in an A320 in the winter.
Oh,
Kahlua, Dave said Keflavik in Iceland was the airport with the cliff at the end of the runway that leads towards the ocean.
It's ICAO.
Killer?
It's BIKF.
Mm-hmm. BIK. I've flown into it on stream. It's a fun airport. It's a very fun airport. I am very, very excited for that Bluebird 757. Start doing some Icelandic ops over at Keflavik in that airplane. I could not have that in my hangar soon enough. Guys, from my side of things, I really do appreciate you guys tuning in with me today. If you haven't done so already, make sure you smash down that like button for me. Not really going to set like goals for the podcast, man. This is more of just a chill environment where we're just hanging out, sitting, talking about everything flight sim and real world aviation. Obviously, we have Mr. David Avery here today, who's a senior staff engineer of simulations over at a major U.S. airline here in Denver. We've got Midnight Maverick in the house as well. Mav, what's going on, my man? Hope you're doing well. Is that a real sim behind the one guy? No, I believe that is a green screen, but that is what he actually works on and all that kind of stuff.
That's a picture of a real sim. It's not one of ours. That's in the factory.
Yeah, that's one of the sims that is in the factory that is not used by the airline he uses or he is employed by, but just for
we use that. We use those sims. I mean,
you do use the CAEs. I gotcha.
Yeah, we're 80% CAE. I have got now 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I've got close to 25 of that model sim in the building.
Nice. Well, if you're ever looking for a special guest to jump in that 320, just let me know. Just let me know. I'll pay accommodations. I'll lodge at a Motel 6 if I have to. But I want to make it down. But I appreciate you stopping in, Midnight Maverick. But I'm gonna go ahead and take this opportunity, guys. Me and I have Midnight Maverick in the chat here, guys. Take a break for a quick second. As you all know, yesterday I did not stream because I had something very, very important to attend last night. But it is official. I have officially been selected to become a part of the Wings for Hope World Flight crew. I'm officially a member of their crew, and I will be heading down to Southern California this year to do my first ever experience with World Flight, where we're just going to be for 7 days straight, traveling around the world for charity. And if I'm not mistaken, Wings for Hope has selected St. Jude as their charity of choice. So all proceeds that we receive from those streams and all that kind of stuff are going to be going directly to St. Jude's, to the hospital, all that kind of stuff. But I'm officially a World Flight crew member with the Wings for Hope crew member, with the Wings for Hope crew, who is also familiar crew members of Wings for Hope, Midnight Maverick, obviously. You got Mark, all those that know Mark. We've got Captain Canada, Blue Games, Jeff Faviano, plethora of other major flight sim content creators that are going to be heading down there this year to raise some money for charity and do some flying. Unfortunately, we're not going to be in a full cockpit this year. Unfortunately, due to some circumstantial reasons, the full cockpit has since been sold by the owner that they were using last year. However, they are doing their best to replicate and build their own 777 cockpit, if you would. So because we're going to be flying the 777 this year, so it's going to be a ton of fun. I'm looking forward to it. I'm obviously not going to be there the full week because I'm actively going on vacation next week, and all of my vacation time is going to cease to exist for that. But come November, I should have a few days. So I'm planning on being down there between November 6th and November 10th. That's going to be the days that I'm going to be down in Southern California doing some flying. I know me and Mark were talking about having the interest of doing that Las Vegas to Honolulu leg. I think this is something that I'm going to try and bid on. But yes, we are officially a World Flight crew member, so I will be down there streaming for charity, flying virtual airplanes. It's going to start off in Sydney, and we're going to fly the entire the entire world back to Sydney in 7 days. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's a 24-hour daily event, so I'm going to be able to stream it on my channel. So if you guys want to keep up to date, but obviously, you know, there are going to be sponsorships involved with Thrustmaster and all that kind of stuff. So there are going to be specific chat rooms that I'm going to direct you guys to go and hang out, where if you're going to want to send donations, I'm going to send you directly to the World Flight Wings for Hope crew chat and all that kind of stuff. But being Midnight Mav is in the chat, I figured I would make that announcement now, as the interview was conducted by Midnight Maverick, and I'm gracefully honored to be a part of the Wings for Hope crew, and I really do appreciate the opportunity. I'm looking forward to it this year.
Oh, Mike, well done. Congratulations. Yeah, that's terrific. You got to keep me up to date on all that, and we'll promote it over here that you're going to be there, and let people know if they don't hear it otherwise. Man, that is absolutely outstanding. Guys, once again, welcome to the Virtual Flight Deck, a flight simulation podcast here on YouTube. I am Captain Jack, Flight Sim, FLTSIM. Owls FS is here, of course. Mickety Mike. Be sure to check out all the channels, guys, when you can. Those of you who may be tuning into the replay of this special podcast, it's something that we got together to do to kind of further things in the flight sim community and talk about this passion that we love so much. So be sure to check out all the other channels. CST Gaming, hopefully we'll have him back before too long. EJ Davis couldn't be here with us today, and we got a couple of others who join us from time to time, but Al's going to be streaming later this evening. And once again with us, special guest today is Dave Avery, who is a senior systems engineer for all the software and the simulators at a major airline. And Dave, I wanted to ask you about landings in the simulator. Now, granted, pilots land airplanes every day. They get down on the ground. They get hundreds of thousands of passengers there safe daily. But, you know, in the flight sim community, we tend to put a lot of focus on our landings and landing rates. And so tell me, would you say is a real world landing rate compared to a quote unquote butter or a under minus 140, feet per minute landing rate? How often, and do pilots really care about that in the real world? So what do you think, Dave?
Well, it's actually sort of the opposite. Greasing one on is it's always nice. Pilots take a lot of pride in it, but the FAA actually likes to see you plan it fairly firmly, especially if there's any contamination on the runway, if there's any weather. Greasing it on leads to hydroplaning. So we like to land them firm enough that you set the wheel mains, especially onto the runway, and plant them. And then same when you bring the nose down, you bring it down with enough velocity that you're not going to hydroplane the nose wheel. Hydroplaning, certainly on snow and water, is a real hazard. We've had a couple of airplanes skid off the runway in Denver in the last decade because they didn't stick to the runway well, even though we groove the runways and do everything else. The FAA, during a check ride especially, the FAA likes to know that you landed. They don't want it to be so smooth you don't feel it. They want to feel a bump on landing to know that you planted it.
Yeah, now I'll tell you, Mike and Al's here do some of the finest landings, and very consistently that I believe exists on the the flight sim channels on YouTube. They're just really great at it. And Al's is going to make a fine pilot. I've told him several times that I want to be in his first load of passengers when he takes over an aircraft. Probably have to book a Delta flight though, won't I, buddy?
Yeah, sadly.
Well, we sit here and say, man, well, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna get to the 320 family for Delta, and I'm gonna fly for one of the best airlines that the U.S. has ever had. In quotations, right? Because there's many good airlines in this country, right? However, I'm pretty sure Al is going to take whatever job comes to him. Right?
Oh yeah, I'd take whatever.
No matter what the side of the freaking airplane says, it's just going to be, hey, I'm in a 320 cockpit, dude. I'm chilling, man. I don't care if my call sign is Spirit Wings. You can call me. You can call me November 11156, and I'll fucking fly the airplane. Excuse my language, but But quickly, guys, Dennis Aviation, really do appreciate the first class membership. Welcome to first class. Massive W's there for you in the chat. And Tyler Aviator says, for World Flight, is there a map or something with all the legs? Tyler, once I get more information from Wings for Hope about the event, I will be posting it in the Discord so you guys can follow it and all that kind of good stuff. I did have 2 questions for Dave in the chat. I'll go ahead and kind of part them together. First is, how did you end up in this type of job? And secondly, what is the most interesting part that you, in your personal opinion, about training procedures in the sim?
So I'm an electronics head. Dropped out of college, got a job in the electronics industry, and have been doing electronics and field service and hardware and software for 50 years. And I was between jobs and basically got a hit for a company in Southern California that ran a old 727 sim.
Jeez.
Well, it was the computer in it was transistors. It had no integrated circuits. Let's put it that way. And so I was there for 10 years. I was the guy. I did everything.
He was him.
I was it. The owner was an airline pilot. We had 4 instructors. We did the company's other big business was weekend ground schools for all your pilot's licenses to pass your writtens. And that was a long-standing business that the owner had been doing since he was a rookie pilot with his airline. But I did that for 10 years. In the late 90s, the airline industry changed, and there wasn't much demand for flight engineers. That's what we were training. And so we basically shut the operation down. I'm like, I'm between jobs. And one of the side things that company had done is we built modified systems for other companies. And the company I'm at now was one of my customers. And they had said when I was here upgrading some of their sims, hey, if you're ever looking for a job, keep us in mind. So I did. And I called the training department, simulation department, and said, hey, you got anything open? And they said, for you, we'll make something. And so I ended up in Denver. And I've been here for 25 years. So a little bit of the luck, but lots of experience in electronics and computing, and a lot of diverse experience in industry. So I had some hydraulics. I had some other experiences that worked really well for this. So and a lot of on-the-job learning, and something that the reality is we've hired a lot of new engineers in the last 5 years. Big growth, a lot of need for new talent, a lot of young engineers coming in. You can't hire a simulator engineer. There is no training for a simulator engineer. So you'll hire a mechanical engineer, an electrical engineer, an aero engineer, maybe somebody with previous simulator experience from another operator. But a huge part of it is you hire people that are good engineers and whatever their engineering background is, and then you expect for 6 months to 2 years, they're going to be coming up to speed. There's just a whole lot of OJT learning. There's no classroom. I mean, yeah, we get courses from the sim makers, but they give you some knowledge, but most of the knowledge is seat of the pants, teach yourself, go work on them, learn the parts you don't know from your background. If you're a mechanical engineer, okay, the mechanics of them are something you can work on. You might become one of our specialists on mechanical systems, but you got to learn the avionics, the aerodynamics, the flight control systems, the how to operate the airplanes, right? We have to know at least some level how to operate every sim. So I can pretty much program every FMC we got to some level.
Hey guys, I'm a radio engineer.
Yeah.
Take that in office.
Yeah, but did you go to college to be a radio engineer, or did you go to college to be an engineer?
No.
Yeah, see, same thing. So it's an interesting career. One thing I will say for it is because we are a maintenance organization, we're not designing the sims typically. Um, we're doing more corrective and project work than development. Although in my case, we use, I think most of you should be familiar with ACARS at this point. We use simulated ACARS because we don't have the ground side in the simulators, because we don't have ATC for CPDLC or for ATS. We don't have the company because the company really doesn't want us using their computing resources when we're not in real time or in real flights. So they're over there, we're over here. So we have a complete simulated ACARS system. It's all canned messages. We don't like our instructors composing messages. We think it takes away from training time. I'm a pretty strong believer that the instructors should be using as much automation in the instruction as possible. So they're paying mostly attention to the student and not sitting sideways looking at an instructor station, trying to play all the roles, just like your SATs, your simulated ATC you guys use. That's why you have VATC to take care of that. So we have a simulated ACAR system. That's been one of my core assignments for the last decade. So pretty much all of the implementation of the ACAR system is mine, but I don't do any of the messages. The editors for the messages I'm responsible for, but the creation of the messages, that's the training department. So we have pilots that come up with the training scenarios, build the flight plans, build the message sets that go with them, all the book side, all the schoolhouse stuff. We get involved with only to implement what the training department syllabuses that are approved by the AQP program have put together for the next 9 months.
Yeah. Dave, let me ask you this. One of the major companies that we get aircraft from, of course, is PMDG. And they have modeled the 737 series and the 777 now, and I think they're working on a couple of others. I really hope one day we see an 800 MAX out of the group.
Soon.
I'd really like
Very
to see
soon.
that. Yeah. Oh, good. My question for you is if you've seen some of this aircraft, I'm kind of wondering how they get their information about the behavioral characteristics of the aircraft, how they integrate that. And, we say in the flight sim that it's a, study level model of the aircraft and how it operates. How would you rate those compared to real world? And once again, your professional level simulators.
I'm sorry, before you answer, I'm sorry. I'm gonna need to get to my thing here. So I appreciate you guys' time, especially you, Avery. And I hope you guys have a good rest of the podcast. Definitely will try to stay the whole time next time.
Alice, tell us what you got coming up here and when. And
we got my live stream. We're gonna be flying the JetSmart A320 and Cartagena over to Bogota and back today at 6 p.m. my EST.
All right, on the Owls FS channel, don't forget, guys, look that up if you haven't already, and be sure to give him a subscription. Owls, what are we, over about 500,000 subscribers now?
I think I just hit 18 an hour ago, so
nice.
You're doing good. I appreciate it.
Nice, buddy. Well, you're doing a great job, and I'll jump in there and say hello to you later tonight too. Thanks for your time this afternoon. Owls FS, ladies and gentlemen. In the house.
Have a great flight, Owls.
Thank you. See you.
All right. Owls dropped off there. Dave, I forgot where we were. Oh, yeah, PMDG. How do you think that the flight models that we're seeing in Microsoft Flight Simulator actually behave, in accordance with real world aircraft?
I think they're decent. There's a fair amount of knowledge out there. They may be getting some backdoor help from somebody who knows something, but who knows. The flight management computers, which is where a lot of the magic is. There are pilot handbooks available to anybody to tell you how that works. Because if you're a pilot, you can get the Honeywell or Smiths or whoever pilot handbook for the flight management computer. And it goes through every screen and every button and it explains what they do. There may be some subtle effects that you might need more information for. The reality is we don't typically, in our simulators, we don't simulate those systems. We either use the actual aircraft box on like our 7576s and our old 320s. They actually have aircraft black boxes in them. And in fact, on the 320, they have SEX, ELACs, FMGCs, all of that. We've got racks of boxes just like you would in the airplane. So we're stimulating a known set of boxes with fake aero data, like so airspeed, altitude, all that. So the GPS, the gyro inputs to the avionics would be coming from a simulation. The actual avionics in those simulators is the real box. So whatever the simulator does, we know it's what the airplane is going to do because we're running the same box the airplane does. On some of our other simulators, the manufacturer has either taken the FMC software from the airplane and is running it inside an emulator. So again, we're actually running the actual aircraft binary, but not on the aircraft hardware. Or on another brand of simulator we use, they've taken the full source code for the flight management computer on the 777 and recompiled it to run it on a different microprocessor. It's only about 4.7 million lines of data.
Oh, that's it.
Just a little project.
Yeah, just a little project. Mike, Mike, you got something going on there?
No, I was just bringing up some more tabs and all that kind of stuff, just getting ready to give Alice some watch time, you know.
Yep, for sure, for sure. I want to take a moment too, and I promised I'd bring this up earlier, guys. You got to check this out. EFS Extreme Flight Simulation. They now have a facility open in Colorado Springs on the north side. This is where you can get into a real setup simulator 737 cockpit. It's really amazing. Check out their website, EFS. And once again, Mike, I'm going to be calling these folks and say, hey, we're going to talk about you on our podcast and see what we can do. But guys, I encourage you to check this out. If you're in the Chicagoland area or plan a trip up there, or Colorado Springs, check out once again info at extremeflightsimulation.com. The phone number's listed on their website there, and I'm real excited about this, and you know I'm going to be going down there sometime soon. So just wanted to throw that in there real fast. Once again, Dave Avery, the senior systems and software engineer at a big, I almost said it, a big old airline here in the United States. It happens to have a facility in Denver, has been our special guest on the first edition, as it were, even though we've been doing it for a time, but the inaugural takeoff edition of the virtual flight deck with Mickety Mike and Al's and CST Gaming and myself. And Dave, really appreciate you being here. I haven't seen any new questions come up in the chat. And Mike, if you don't have anything, I've got a couple of quick questions left for Dave on a wee bit of a controversial subject. So Mike has had to step away there for just a moment.
I'm
so
still
Dave,
here. I just had to throw the camera off. You're all good.
Oh, okay. Mike, do you have anything else you want to throw at Dave before we're going to have to wrap up in about 15 minutes on my end anyway?
Not as of right now, no.
Okay, see if you do. So let's talk for just a moment, Dave, and you and I talked about this on the phone the other day, but I'm curious about all the problems and what you think about, that Boeing is having to deal with within what maybe you can share on just some of your opinions and everything. The 737 MAX, the issues with MCAS. If you guys, train, of course, we're several years out from that now, but was there a training plethora of things that happened during that, or what's your general overall view?
I think there's a lot of different things going on all at once. Yes, we had to train MCAS. That whole controversy happened right as we were getting our first MAX simulators. And we had to go through a couple of flavors of flight control software as they proved the MCAS solution. Unfortunately, or fortunately, it ends up being a almost non-event For us, I think a lot of it was the training level that was with the crews that were on the two planes that crashed. Certainly, I've been 35 years in simulation, especially starting on the 2.7. Runaway stab trim was something we always trained. I mean, it was like religiously trained because it's a real fast way to lose an airplane. And even when we were doing flight engineer training, that was something they had to be aware of and know what to do on a runaway stab trim. And it's a type of scenario where you don't have time for a checklist. You have to know that you have to reach over and turn off the cutoff switches on the pedestal. They're right there next to the throttles. It takes about an arm reach and they're off. If you see the stab wheels start moving, and on a 737, there are these big stab wheels on either side of the pedestal. They're pretty obvious. They even got a white stripe on them, so you can't miss that they're spinning. As soon as you see them spinning and you're not triggering them, you should probably be stopping them, because if the horizontal stabilizer gets way out of position, you're beating the ground real fast, whether it's nose up or nose down. So the fact that they let the airplane get that far out of trim says to me that there was a definite crew failure there. The fix for MCAS was effectively super simple. MCAS was to trim for the fact that it's a long body and your flight characteristics change on landing. It should auto trim once. If you let off the pressure on the column, you could get it to trim more than once. They just put basically a counter in the trim loop and said, have you done this flight? Yes, no, only do it once. That's the fix. So it wasn't very complex. MCAS is just a little part of the flight. It's a subroutine in the flight control software. It's not even a separate box. It's literally just a tiny little subroutine that they made a little software change to. But yes, we had to train everybody on it. Most of our people, and I think most of our pilots, considered it, that's interesting. We've heard enough about it. We've seen it once. Okay, we're done. It was unfortunate. There's a lot of controversy about the MAX just in general. I'm just going to say that Boeing sold what the customer wanted. Boeing has a major customer in the south of the United States that's an all 737 airline, and they wanted a bigger airplane, but they didn't want it to be a not 737 because they didn't want to have to deal with what the other airlines have to deal with, which is multiple fleets and multiple type ratings. And so they pushed Boeing pretty hard to get them something that they could keep under their training program. That's same operation when they got their NGs. The NG has a display option on their ICAS screens to make it look like round engine gauges. So it looked the same as their classics.
Wow.
So yeah, that was option that was put in there for that airline.
I see.
So there's a lot of blame to spread around, but I think Boeing probably would have built the 37 variant anyway because it's cheaper than building a white sheet airplane like the 787. But to get that big an airplane and make it fit with a 737-500 that's the super short guppy, that's an awful lot of variance. Probably wasn't the best decision in retrospect. But there's also been a lot of complaining for the last 15 years, maybe more, that Boeing had sort of lost their way. They weren't the engineer-driven company they were from 1940 to 1990. When they merged with Douglas, the executive suite got populated with more management types and less engineering types. And Wall Street loved it. The stock loved it. They spun off Spirit Aviation, which made the fuselages for the 737s, and their stock went way up because Wall Street loved that. And last week they bought it back because they lost control of it. So, there was there was a lot of things to push around. I mean, Boeing is a super diverse company. Right now, they're, another huge controversy now with the space station and Starliner.
Yeah.
And that's still up in the air. I haven't heard anything in the last 2 days that makes it sound like it's coming home any sooner.
Yeah. Yeah. As a matter of fact, on the news, it's been saying maybe even February that the crew will come home. So who knows what's going to happen with the spacecraft?
Well, that's one of the options that's under heavy discussion. Is Crew 9 was supposed to launch next week, and it's been delayed a month.
Mhm.
Crew 9 should have taken up 4 new astronauts to the ISS, and Crew 8 would have come home with the 4 that are up there. Now they're talking about maybe sending 2 up, and then the 2 from Starliner would join the 2 that are already up there, and that would become a crew of 4 and fill out the Crew 9 Dragon to come home in 6 months. So their 8-day trip will become 9 months.
And there's only 3 docking ports. So where are they going to put all these things? Yeah, they're no.
They would have to kick Starliner off.
Yeah.
They would have to kick Starliner off unmanned.
Yeah.
Because there's a Cygnus up there now. There'll be a Crew Dragon replacing it in 3 months. Or Cargo Dragon replacing it in 3 months. But they only have place for two crew vehicles, and they've already got 2 up there. So the only way they can launch another crew vehicle is to kick one of those out.
Right. Well, it's going to be really interesting to watch it over the next few months and see what happens there. And Dave, once again, I want to thank you so much for your time. Dave Avery, who is a senior systems engineer with a major airline here in Denver for simulators and software. Dave, it's been wonderful. I really appreciate you being here with us on the inaugural kickoff of the virtual flight deck anyway. And really appreciate your time, your knowledge, your expertise. It's been a lot of fun for those of us who are flight simmers, who not only have a passion for aviation and flight simming, but getting to hear a little bit about what goes on behind the real world scenes that you deal with every day. Dave, thank you so very much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I mean, I've learned a lot about flying in my 35 years of flight simming in the real world. Unlike some of you, I don't have any pilot's licenses. Never needed one. Yeah, but I do have some coworkers who do. I've actually got one coworker who left the department last year and is out flying charters.
Nice.
Out of Centennial.
Very nice.
Because he wants to go further. He was a CFI and he was doing a lot of teaching, and he got an opportunity to get a charter op, and so he's flying citations, I think.
Ooh, nice.
Very nice. Well, Dave, once again, thank you for your time. Thanks for being here. You and I will be talking some more, and we'll hopefully get to have you here on a future edition of the Virtual Flight Deck. You can share with us some more insights to the aviation world and a major airline. Thank you again, sir. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It was a great time.
Yeah, you bet. And Mike, I'm going to go ahead and kind of sign myself off here, and then we'll let you have the final word with the closing statement, and I'll hit my outro and all of that. Tell me, tell us again, Mike, what you've got coming up, what's going on with the world flight. And once again, my friend, congratulations, well deserved. Much applause your way, buddy. Yeah, I'll be here on Monday evening, and then on Wednesday evening, don't know where I'm going to be flying yet, but gonna have a good time. Going to try to get the 777 ready to go. Still doing some flights in the 737-900 and the A320 on the Captain Jack Flight Sim, and appreciate all you guys being here this afternoon and being part of the Virtual Flight Deck Flight Simulation Podcast. And I will see you Monday evening at 6:30. Mike, go ahead and wrap up and close us out, my friend.
Sure. Well, ladies and gentlemen, really do appreciate you guys tuning in with us all today for the first installment of the Virtual Flight Deck podcast. Something that me and Jack are genuinely trying to turn into a larger thing down the road. Obviously, we're still at the very, conception stages of this podcast and kind of getting things the way they need to be and all that kind of good stuff. But we got a plethora of different special guests that we're in talks of having on the podcast, from scenery developers to aircraft developers to real world pilots to this, that, the third. We've got a plethora of ideas that are coming our way and all that kind of good stuff. So be on the lookout for it. This is something I'm going to do regularly now. I'm going to be co-streaming this with Jack. Be sure to head over to Captain Jack's YouTube channel as well and drop him a subscription. Make sure you smash down the like button on his channel as well, and make sure you hit the like button for me as well. And per the usual, guys, we really do appreciate you guys being here with us and hanging out with us. I want to give a special thank you to Mr. Dave Avery for joining in with us today and giving us some insight on how the training aspects of real-world aviation at a commercial airline works and his day-to-day job as an engineer for these simulators, man. You think about it, they have almost $780 million worth of simulators in their facility right now. It's absolutely insane. So I really do appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure you guys smash down that like button, comment, subscribe to the channel if you are new to the content. Midnight Maverick, really do appreciate you guys. Again, I have been accepted into the Wings for Hope World Flight Crew, so be expecting some announcements on that in my Discord and all that kind of good stuff. And be on the lookout for when we start doing some world flight preparation, man. Not exactly what's going to happen tomorrow. I think we're going to be streaming tomorrow. I'm probably going to hop back in the MD-80 because I've been loving that airplane. Yeah, man, really looking forward to you guys. I do appreciate you guys per the usual, and keep an eye out for this podcast, man. It's an awesome time sitting here hanging out and talking with new people, getting to know each other and all that kind of stuff. So really do appreciate you guys. You guys are absolutely awesome. I want to say God bless to each and every single one of you guys, and we will see you guys all in the freaking next one, man, from the Virtual Flight Deck. We'll see you guys.